Hi everyone, my name is Rachelle.
And I'm Jeff.
And this is Burnout Banter. Welcome to a special live recording of Burnout Banter here at SMPS Southern Regional Conference. We are so excited to be here with all of you and can't wait to dive into your questions about proposals, burnout, and collaborations with SMEs.
Here's how today will work. You'll have the opportunity to ask questions in two ways, either by raising your hand and asking directly, or by submitting anonymously via the QR code link.
Can you skip to the next slide? Perfect. So your questions will pop up here, and our moderator, Derek, will be fielding them. So he's going to be looking at both channels to make sure that we keep the conversation flowing. I'd really love to give Derek an opportunity to introduce himself and tell you a little bit about his company first.
Hello, everyone. Mic working? Good. First off, welcome. Jeff, Rachelle, thank you so much for having me here. This is my first podcast, too, so I'm pretty excited about it. My name's Derek Croson. I'm with Open Asset, and we're a company obviously dedicated to empowering the AEC marketer. And while we have, a SaaS solution, our main mission is celebrating the work that everybody in this room does. And when Rachelle and Jeff approached me about moderating, we as a company were like, that's a great opportunity to do just that. So, I've been fortunate enough to work with Rachelle for the last couple years as my role is the head of partnerships. And we've had some great collaboration. And I met Jeff last year at SRC. So I couldn't think of a better way to spend this year's SRC than helping out and being the question guy that's running around. So
We appreciate you very much for that.
Awesome.
All right, Derek, I know we have a couple of seed questions from the form that people could submit in advance. Do we want to start with those while we give people a chance to submit anonymously?
Or y'all can raise your hand.
Yeah. Any initial questions? All right, we'll do a seed question just to get things going. Please go ahead and engage while we're talking through this one. So this one comes in from the previous form. Our corporate leadership empowers and supports our marketing team, but many technical leaders don't respect the process and guidelines the marketing team has established around the proposal workflow. How can marketing teams enforce accountability across a large firm?
I think that's a really great question. I'm going to tackle it first and
Have at
then
it.
throw it to that technical team member who's probably part of the problem. So my first question would be, if you are feeling empowered by leadership, then you probably need to go back to leadership and let them know what's going on. In this case, it seems like maybe they're not leading by example and enforcing the way that they need to be to make sure your technical staff is playing nicely the way that you need them to. You probably also need to do a little bit of I'm going to borrow a term from Jeff and say alignment tune-up. And it might be that there's a misunderstanding between the technical staff, marketing, and leadership on what your goals are and what everyone's roles are within marketing. And that could probably be cleared up pretty quickly. It's tricky with a large firm. You definitely need to come together at multiple touch points. You have to work a little bit harder, but it can be done.
Yeah, one thing we talk about a lot too is finding an advocate. If you're having a difficult time with one particular person or one particular team, maybe you can go find somebody else who will support you and has the ear of perhaps whoever's in charge of that team or whoever's on that team and kind of work in a roundabout way to get to the point where you're getting the support that you need. So that can be a really effective way of kind of circumventing people if they're being difficult and, trying to find an advocate that will support whatever it is that you're needing to get done.
News, we have some anonymous questions.
Thank you. Yay.
All right, first question. We're going to go top down. As someone who is in burnout recovery, are there tips you would recommend to maintain that?
You want to go first?
Sure. So I think it's important to look at how you got to the point of burnout in the first place. And a lot of times we'll change a job or we'll change a situation because we think that change is going to create a better situation for us. But we have to recognize, the saying that the grass is greener. Well, we're the ones who take care of the grass, right? So if we recognize the behavior that put us into burnout in the first place, then figuring out how we change our own behavior in those situations can be a really powerful way to avoid repeating the same thing. I had a client who came to me and he was ready to leave a job. He had very abusive bosses, 2 principals that he worked for. He was an architect. And he was just like, I'm ready to go. And it's like, okay, great, you're ready to go. But if you don't learn how to deal with this situation, you could end up somewhere else where you're in a similar situation. And so we talked through, like, how can you stand up for yourself? How can you say what needs to be said? And then if you want to leave, but you'll have that skill set for the rest of your life. So I think learning what put you in that situation in the first place, kind of doing some self-reflection, and then, maybe getting help if you need to see how to change those behaviors is a good way to go about it.
I agree on all of that. I think that maybe I'd mentioned to someone that I was absolutely fried last year. So I am in burnout recovery, and I've been doing that exercise of figuring out how I got there. But I also, because I do cycle through burnout and I have my entire career, I'm usually pretty good at spotting when it's starting to happen and pulling myself back from that edge. And I realized last year I just careened over that cliff and hit the bottom and didn't even see it coming. And so what I have been doing is taking those slow steps back and trying to figure out how I got there and stopping every step of the way and being very intentional when I say, yes, I can take on assignments, or yes, I would like to sign up for this project, or whatever it is. Someone told me very recently that if you say yes to everything, your yes means nothing. And I'm trying very hard to embody that mindset in my personal and professional life because I like to say yes to a lot of things.
Yeah, and saying yes to something means you're saying no to something else. So it's being intentional about that. Whether it's cognizant or not, any decision has 2 sides, so.
Agreed. I was usually saying no to taking care of myself.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah.
All right, we've got some good engagement here. Next question. I think this one ties a little bit into the session yesterday. How do you talk to your firm about recognition? The team doesn't recognize the hard work that's put into pursuits, and it's hard to stay motivated from this. Any help or recommendations?
Jeff, what happens when you give me your narrative?
You do something with it?
Yeah, I've been working with Jeff for years now and did not realize, I think until last year, that he actually doesn't always know what happens with the content that is requested from him, which baffled me. So I think a lot of it is a little bit of education on the part of marketing and just saying, this is everything that goes into the process. Let me walk you through Proposals 101 at the high level. There's a reason I need your stuff in advance type thing.
Derek, she has a question in the back.
Or a comment.
Well, I tried to change it to not.
Okay, so the follow-up to this question for the podcast is that I'm going to paraphrase horribly, but we put a lot of work into proposals and making them look good and read well, and often when we send out the draft, what we get back from our technical staff is just a laundry list of things that we need to correct and fix, and it's a little bit demoralizing because we've put so much effort in, and they don't always recognize the good stuff. And it might be that they do recognize the good stuff, they just don't call it out. So I would prompt them a little bit, either during the drafting process or as your feedback follow-up after it's been submitted, and say, what did you like about this? What went well? Did this read well to you? Or if you try something new, when you send out the draft, specifically be like, I tried a new flow chart here, or I tried a new design for the org chart. What do you think? And then see if that maybe prompts some positive, or just be straight honest with them and say, it really helps me if you provide what you like in addition to what you'd like to fix, because then I know what to do for you in the future. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So she's saying that getting that acknowledgement helps avoid burnout. I have a couple things. So I do a lot of quality control where I look at other engineers' drawings and see what the mistakes are. I don't redline what they did well. I redline what they messed up. And so I think when we're used to reviewing things in that nature, right, it is kind of counterintuitive to be like, oh, you actually did this really well. You're used to seeing these drawings come back that are just completely bloody. And and that's the job of the QCer, right, is to catch all the mistakes. So I don't think most of us think that way of, and so that, right or wrong, that's how we QC. The other thing I would add then too is, how often do you acknowledge yourself? Because when you acknowledge yourself, you get that positive feeling. And then if somebody else comes and does it too, that's kind of icing on the cake. But if you're not acknowledging what you're doing, which most of us are terrible at, for reasons we talked about yesterday, right? Like we don't want to seem overconfident, we don't want to seem conceited, but you can acknowledge yourself and be confident in your abilities and what you did without being overconfident. To me, the difference is I'm telling everybody how great I am versus I'm telling myself how good of a job I just did. And I think that there's a big difference between those two things. So.
Awesome. Lots of questions coming in. Also, just a quick note, if you have comments or if you want to ask your question live and be captured on the podcast, let me know, raise a hand, and I'll run over with the mic. That way it's picked up and recorded. So next question, how do you get SMEs to understand how much goes into what marketers do and it's not just copy and paste?
What? We don't just use that same proposal we've been submitting since 2018?
Well, some people do. I've seen it.
Jeff.
I've seen it. I was an owner's rep. I have seen it. Where the name of the project was wrong in the cover letter. So they didn't win.
I'm shocked. Shocked. I think that goes back to that pulling those SMEs into the process as much as possible and just kind of walking them through it. You might be dragging them kicking and screaming into it, but letting them know that you are so much more than like a document magician or a graphic designer. I don't know why that is sometimes said as almost like I don't want to say slur, but like a diminutive, right? When there's so much work that goes into it. But bringing them in and saying like, okay, you have sent me this narrative. Here's how I've edited it to fit into page count, to fit into the question, to make sense to the reader. Here is how I'm pairing it with things. Like do like little mini workshops or something. Like I really advocate for marketing lunch and learns within the company. The outside companies can come and do it. You can buddy up and do it with your engineers as well and kind of build that relationship. It also helps to be curious about what they do so that they then become curious about what you do.
That's what I was going to suggest is, you may have to take the first step and ask them, like, tell me, people like to talk about themselves. Tell me a little bit about what you do every day. And most of them, I think, will reciprocate that. Maybe not all of them, but
Some of them.
yeah. I also think like getting them, if there's a way to get them out of like their desk or go for a walk or go out for lunch or do something that gets them out of like work mode, that might help with a connection point too.
Starbucks used to mess up my order all the time. I just like a chai, don't want a dirty chai. Bear with me here. But they used to give me dirty chais a lot. And I was like, I don't know what to do with this. And they'd be like, well, keep it. We'll fix your drink, but you can keep that one. And so I take that dirty chai, and I figured out one of the electrical engineers in my building really, really likes dirty chais. And so I would just leave it on his desk. And I did that for like a month straight. And then Adam became my best friend. And when we had to work on a proposal, I was his dirty chai buddy. And I'd be like, Adam, I need you to edit this. And he'd be like, I got you. And so I built that relationship just with like this chai that Starbucks messed up. Like it's so easy. Unintentional.
Okay.
But I mean, there is something being said for connection. I think I told somebody this story yesterday, but I was working with an engineer down here in Houston on a project, and he was an older guy than me, and so I would give him direction, and he would refuse to do it, and I would redo the direction, and he'd refuse to do it, and we had this very contentious relationship going on until I actually came down here. We hung out, went to lunch, and everything shifted. So it was getting that personal connection with that individual helped change the relationship.
Great question. Good answers. Next question. Anybody want to say live? No? Okay. How do you save yourself from burnout when your large firm's culture is very much work hard and extra effort with long hours encouraged? Any tips? I'm not burnt out just yet.
So I was talking to this individual one time, and she worked for a company that sounds very much like this, and she decided that she was fed up with it. And so she was just like, I am not working anymore at night. I am not going to answer, I'm not going to answer emails outside. I'm just done. Now, I would have preferred that she had gone and talked to somebody about this, but she was at the point where it was just like, I'm done. So she did that. She never got in trouble for it. And all of a sudden, her coworkers were like, hey, what are you doing here? And how come you don't have to work at night? And can we start doing that too? And they started doing it. And leadership then caught on and was like, oh, this seems really important to everybody. And that one individual changed the entire culture of that company by taking a stand and saying, I'm not doing this anymore. Now, she could have gotten in trouble for that too, right? So there is the other side to that. But I think we, as individuals, we have to decide where our line is and draw the line and then, stand up for ourselves. And, if that doesn't fit at that company, it's going to fit somewhere else that you probably belong otherwise.
I agree. I think that self-advocacy part is really important because I would actually ask, is the pressure coming from the company or is this an internal pressure to keep up with everyone else that you are perceiving? Because I've also been there. I remember watching my marketing manager literally put herself in the hospital because she was working insane hours. She'd be there at 6 o'clock in the morning and she'd leave after 10 o'clock at night. And I was like, I probably need to do that too, because they're seeing that, they're recognizing her. It didn't work that way for me. Nobody recognized my effort. I just burnt out. And it didn't really work out for her either, since she ended up in the hospital. So really putting that personal boundary in place and recognizing what you can do and what you are willing to do and sticking to that will be so much more powerful than bowing to that pressure.
Yeah, I also think if you're leading people, so obviously I'm here at this conference this week and I still, I have a day job too. So I had drawings that needed to get checked. And so I spent time working over the weekend doing that, knowing that I was going to be here and doing this instead of what needed to get done during the week. And so I told my team, hey, I did this weekend because of this, so that it's not the expectation, right? Because I can say all the time, you don't need to work extra, but if I'm working extra, they're going to pay attention to what I'm doing, not what I'm saying, just like our kids. So I think it's important as leaders too that we try to share with our people, if I'm choosing to do this, you don't have to too. But changing the culture of a company is tough, but it can be done one person at a time.
Awesome. So this is fun because people are voting these questions and they're moving and they're getting ranked. So the one I thought I was going to ask is not the one that's there anymore. So keep up the engagement. This is good. This is good. My team is all over Texas. When we have a win, we want to celebrate. Any tips or ideas on how to do that virtually?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Do you have any ideas?
I do not have any ideas off the top of my head. Do you?
Derek, do you want to grab her?
Woo!
So I have a suggestion for this question. One of my firms that I used to work at, we were all over Texas as well. and we use something called, it's a software called Motivosity, and it's an internal software where the company can give you, and they gave us $10 or $20 of Motivosity bucks every month. And it's like a, social media thing. You can go online, you can go to this internal post, and you can recognize your team, you can recognize anybody, and you give them or, award them this Motivosity bucks, and they can go to Amazon, they can go to the, internal store, they can cash it out, and everybody sees it. And then at the end of the year, they, at like the company holiday parties, they would like recognize, employees for their contributions all over the company. So one recognition that you can bring back to your company is that. I don't know what it costs, but I really liked it. I recognized my team that way too.
Yeah, I think she was
Love it.
talking about yesterday about kind of those employee recognition programs seeming to go away a little bit. So some companies use them, but I don't think it's widely adopted.
Well, and I was going to say for us, because I work virtually, this wasn't my question, but we've done something similar, but we send the employee like a DoorDash gift card or an Uber Eats gift card, and because you can do it virtually, and then you can set up a team meeting where you all enjoy lunch virtually, or you get to just take that time to relax and kind of have a powwow with them, but lunch is on you where they can get what they would like wherever they're at. That's been a big hit as well.
I love that. We do something similar at Pi. We send everybody a sugar wish at some point and let them kind of choose their reward. We don't celebrate together, so we're missing a piece. And now I'm like, wheels are spinning here.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so I used to work with a fully virtual team too, and it's just being intentional about creating time for everybody to get together virtually. We used to do what I called open office hours. So I would just set up a Teams meeting and we would all be working, but we would all be online together, and some great conversations came out of that type of an experience where, you're kind of simulating that we're all in the office together and I'm overhearing this conversation and learning something. So I think you just have to be a little more intentional, and celebrating wins doesn't have to be big either. An acknowledgement or a handwritten note or something like that means way more to people than potentially like a big happy hour or something like that.
I think the software rep over here, just a couple things to maybe suggest some minor win celebrations. We use something as a team. We're majority remote as well. Kudo Board. It's an online service. I don't know if there's a cost, but it's pretty minimal. It's kind of how we do birthdays and things of that nature, but it's fun. It's an easy way to say thank you, great job. Everybody can kind of put their comments in. You can add GIFs, pictures, whatever you want. And then similar to Jeff, we do every week, we have a 30-minute meeting on Friday, or it doesn't have to be Friday, and we call it Weekly Wins and Kudos. And we get on there, and the intent is not to really talk about the next project or the next task. It's to celebrate the work that we did that week and accomplished. So, yeah.
I love it. Thank you, Derek. I was kind of hoping you would actually chime in on that one. I knew you had to have an answer.
I'm glad I could help. All right, next question. Top ranked, we've got 2. What are some early signs of burnout that we can look out for before things get too bad?
So there's 3 things that go into burnout: exhaustion, cynicism, and then a lack of feeling like you're being productive. I'm blanking on the word, efficacy. So if you're feeling one of those, so to really be burned out, you have to have all 3 of those things going on at once. So if you're just exhausted, but you're still engaged in what you're doing and not super negative about it and still feeling productive, you want to deal with the exhaustion right before the other 2 come, and same for the other 2, right? So it's looking for those 3 things and how they're showing up for you, I think, is a good indicator of trying to catch it early. Also, burnout comes from stress, right? So there's good stress, there's bad stress. And the type of bad stress, chronic stress, when we stay under stressful situations for too long, that's what eventually leads to burnout. So in order to avoid chronic stress going on for too long, you have to rest and recover, which most of us don't do. And that doesn't have to be a big, like, I need a full week off of work. It's find 15 minutes every day just to put it down and go for a walk or take some deep breaths or listen to music. So trying to find ways to give yourself rest and recovery throughout the day can help avoid it too.
Yeah, I'm going to dig in a little bit more on that, understanding what it looks like for you, because that's really where you have to kind of get in tune with yourself. So for me, when I'm starting to burn out, I do not want to get out of bed in the morning, and I'm a morning person, so that's my first, like, uh-oh. If I'm not excited about my day, then something's wrong.
You also said if you start eating out a lot.
That was my next one. I love cooking, but I start to self-sacrifice when I burn out because I've piled too much on my plate. So I start ordering out or I stop eating, which is not ideal. And I stop working out, which, as y'all maybe saw yesterday, I really enjoy doing physical things. And so once those three start to go, then I know I need to hit the pause button because something has gone wrong. My dog also likes to pile her toys by my desk, and if I'm not taking a break to diminish the pile of toys by throwing them, that's a pretty good indicator. So it's like she knows.
I'm really excited about this next question. These are truly anonymous. We have no idea who submitted them.
Did you submit this one?
But I could take a guess at who submitted the next one. I'm not going to point any names or point anybody out. But this is a fun question. We all have our favorite music while exercising. What's your go-to burnout music?
Oh, it's directed at me.
Specifically for Jeff. Okay.
We were talking about last night my love of gangster rap from the 90s. So that's what I like to put on when I need a good workout. I'm more of a West Coast guy. Yes, Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, Eminem. Yeah. Exercise helps me get out of burnout. So that's a huge... I'm like her. When I stop exercising, that's when I start noticing that I've gone down the wrong path. And so, yeah, reconnecting with music can be a really powerful way to give yourself a break too.
Rachelle, you have an opportunity to...
I'm a full-on millennial, and you can tape my pop punk playlist out of my cold dead hands. Like, that's what I go to. It's my comfort music. Like, bring me the Blink-182, bring me the Taking Back Sunday. Like, I'm just gonna put it on play and disassociate for a little bit, and then I'll be okay.
Right on.
Do you just listen to the podcast? Is that?
You know, recently, my morning workouts have been podcasts. Burnout Banter. But no, I'm probably like 2000s, 2010 hip hop rap if I'm working out.
These are the kind of questions.
You weren't supposed to tell
These are
anybody.
the kind of questions you get when you have too many old fashions with somebody last night.
All right. Back to serious. What do you recommend doing when you've approached an SME regarding narrative items for an FAQ via email, Teams, phone call, even approach them in person and they still don't get what you need?
Have you tried writing it incorrectly? I have found that if I write something and it is wrong, I get those red lines real quick. But if I give them a blank, like, hey, just fill out these questions, they will dodge that until it's due.
Yeah, I mean, this was one thing, I've learned a lot from Rachelle, but I think one thing she didn't realize, as an engineer, I like things to be right. Yes, I know, you're all shocked.
I'm shocked.
But when you give me a blank piece of paper and ask me to write something, that fear part of my brain shows up, and I will find anything else that I know how to do well to avoid filling out that blank piece of paper. So if that's, what you're struggling with, that helping them, we've talked about interviewing people and trying to get the information out of them that way so that you're scheduling 15 minutes to get it instead of waiting for them to give it to you. So I don't know what their issue is, but trying to figure out what their issue is, because it may be something you don't think that it actually is. And then once you know what their issue is, then you can help them. I would go back to getting an advocate, right? If this person just is completely non-responsive and you tried everything, who do they listen to? And how can you get that person to influence them instead of trying to do it yourself?
We've got a question here.
In addition to sending something incorrect, I have also thrown in the line that says, if I don't hear from you from 2 p.m., I will be submitting this exact document as is.
I love it.
And that's when they kind of, they get a little puckered and then they actually do something. So that helps as well.
Lighting that little bit of a fire. Yes. Anybody wants to sponsor Burnout Banter?
All right, I like this one. This was the one that changed on me and confused me. What are great ideas for helping the team to manage frustration in the middle of a response with changes that we don't control?
You got something?
Dang it. You got something?
I got something.
All right, go for it.
So I think when we try to control things that are outside of our control, it causes a lot of stress. And so that can be a big problem, right? And it's all self-imposed stress too. So I always, instead of trying to, we have an expectation about how we think things are going to go. They don't go that way, and then we get frustrated or disappointed or whatever. So I always like to have people focus on what they can control, which is them. And so set an intention, right? As I go through this proposal process, I'm going to be proud of myself if I show up this way. And then you can ask yourself, right, and acknowledge, am I doing that today? And then you can feel good about yourself, whether everything goes really well or really poorly. But it takes the stress away from trying to control the things that we can't control.
I'm gonna take the ridiculous approach. I specifically have a lot of tools in my office for dealing with stress, like a primal scream pillow. So I just kind of go let it out and then come back. But I think it's really important to be able to have someone not to vent at, but vent with, and just say like, this is what's going on. This is like, talk through it with me. To Jeff's point, having an advocate or just somebody to soundboard with you is really important. As a solo consultant, that was my business partner, Ben, in Pi. We have a little chat specifically for this is where my proposal went wrong. It's a safe space. We vent about it. You don't necessarily get advice, but then you're clear-headed and ready to tackle whatever is coming up.
Yeah, venting's a great suggestion because you do have to process the emotion if you're going to move forward and be able to continue, right? If we stuff the emotion, it's going to eat at us and it's eventually going to get us to that point of burnout. So I like to have some rules for venting, and I like to have people that you can vent to. So you always want to ask the person if they're okay if you vent to them right now, because I may have had a terrible day and I am not in a place to be there for you in the way that you need me to. And so then you might want to go on to somebody else. I always try to set a time limit. I need 5 minutes just to vent. That way you know what you're getting into. When my wife comes to me and it's like, hey, let's talk. And it's like, okay, is this an hour? Is this 30 minutes? What am I getting myself into here? And then the whole time I'm like, how much longer is this going to go on? So having that time limit up front, and then, if you've established these rules with people first, not having them offer suggestions, not having them provide solutions, because the whole point of this exercise is just to process that emotion for you. And then thank them when you're done. And then if you want to brainstorm solutions or whatever, that can happen after you've processed the emotion. But
yeah, I can relate, Jeff. My wife is big on, every time she comes to me with something, I'm always trying to solve the problem.
Yes.
And she's like, sometimes I just want you to listen. And so we're working on, when she comes to me now, I just say, do you want a solution or do you just want my ears? And it actually helps.
Yeah.
All right, so next question. Any methods or exercises to help avoid creative burnout? The feeling of needing to always be extra creative or find new ways to be creative in all of my projects?
Oh, I can field that one. And I'm going to take it from a slightly different angle in that I think there is a lot of pressure on us to not only be creative and be better and more exciting and whatever, but also to do it purposefully and with an intention of like the world seeing it or selling it or something. And so I would encourage you, if you are in a creative field, like proposals or graphic design or whatever it is.
Or engineering.
It's a different kind of creativity, but I acknowledge it. To have something where you can have like a messy creative outlet. I was talking to someone about my fake notebook. I'm a writer. I buy these really pretty notebooks and I feel really pressured to write good in them. And so I bought a dollar store notebook so I can just write bad in them because no one will ever see it. And I don't know why, but mentally I can just flow in that notebook and it's totally fine. And that has become my outlet where I'm not always on like I am to do graphics for Burnout Banter or pie or proposals or whatever it is, because there's a lot of pressure there for those to be perfect, especially in our proposals. So having like a messy, dark, secret creative outlet is really, really helpful.
Yeah, so a couple of things. Is the pressure to be creative self-imposed? So you might want to think about that. And is that really necessary?
Probably not.
Yeah, and then I also, because you're thinking all day long, I like to find activities where I don't have to think. So for me, video games is a great way to just like turn my brain off and have fun for a little while. So it doesn't have to be video games. It can be whatever you like to do that shuts your brain off for a little bit and gives you that break.
It's more of a follow-up, but for our graphic design, just a practical thing that we did for our creative manager. So she's within a year of us starting. She lives her commute is quite a bit, and so she asked if she could work at home on Fridays. And so for her, that allows her to be creative in a space that people are not interrupting her 12 times a day. And so that seems to be really helpful for her to have that option, especially because she's proven herself and she doesn't need to tick off the hours. So that's just been like a practical application that seems to really be helpful for her.
That's perfect. Yeah, having a separate, comfortable space to be creative or a boundary where you get to work from home, I think that's fantastic. How are
We're
we doing
close on time, but
Okay.
we do have a very highly ranked question, so maybe a short response on this one before we close it out.
All right, last question.
I thrive in the chaos of busyness of proposals, but the weight of the slow times is soul crushing. Sink in. How can I navigate the feeling of unproductiveness during these slow times to prevent burnout? You're not alone. I think this happens in a lot of industries.
My first question is, you get downtime? Like, rest is productive, just relax. And I know Jeff has the best answer for this one, so I'm gonna let him.
Yeah, I deal with the same thing with engineers. We push so hard to get a project out the door. And then as soon as we're done with that and they don't have something right after it, they start to worry about their job security. And they start to worry about like, how am I gonna fill my day? And so I try to talk to them all the time. I'm like, you need this time, take this time, relax, because the next one's coming. And if you don't get the rest, it's just gonna pile up on top of each other. So I think as leaders, right, acknowledging like, hey, everybody needs a little downtime and it's okay, just take the downtime. I just had somebody pushing really hard on Sunday to get something done that was due on Monday. And I'm like, I do not wanna see you today. Like, you are not at work today, go home. And I had to tell them over and over again, like, no, I'm serious. Like, I don't want you to be here. Go home. And so I think it's really important that we actually use those times of slowness. I get it. I don't like to have nothing to do at work either. It can be really boring. But if you think of it differently than I don't have anything to do versus I'm resting and recovering right now, it may trick your mind into enjoying it.
Is that a wrap?
That's a wrap. Thank y'all for joining us for Burnout Banter Live. This has been absolutely wonderful, and we will see you soon.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Thank y'all for joining us at our first live recording of Burnout Banter at Southern Regional Conference a few weeks ago. It was amazing. Jeff, Derek, and I are jumping back in to do a little post-recording and debrief, just a smidge. We wanted to let you all know that some of the questions that were unanswered during the live session will be answered on future episodes of Burnout Banter, so stay tuned.
They turned up.
Turn up. So stay tuned because we will have answers to those questions for you throughout the season.
So I noticed after I left the conference room that everybody is wearing t-shirts with Rachelle's face on it. And I thought that maybe you all had t-shirts to promote the podcast, but I don't think that's what it was all about.
No, and I probably should have mentioned this in the session, but I mean, first off, Rachelle, Jeff, thanks for having Open Asset join and moderate. But the big news is that, Rachelle and I have worked together from a partnership standpoint for a couple of years now, and she is now officially a member of the Open Asset team. So we are delighted to have her on board and bring her expertise, and we're excited about what the future holds. So onward.
That is exciting news.
Super excited. So excited that they put my face on a shirt. There are pictures. If you want them, you can
It's
find
a
them.
great picture if you can find it on LinkedIn.
They are out there. They are out there. AI might even find it for you. Who knows?
Probably.
So just a friendly reminder to our listeners, if you have a burning question, you can email it to us at burnoutbanter@gmail.com. Please remember to like or subscribe to the podcast on Amazon, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to make sure that you never miss an episode. Rachelle, we have some exciting dates coming up.
We do. It is conference season, and Jeff and I are in it.
We sure are. Derek is too.
Yeah,
You can see the whole crew.
it's the whole
We
crew.
will be at Southwest Regional Conference, April
9th through 11th.
9th through 11th in Park City, Utah. And then we're going to be at Northeastern Regional Conference in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, April 23rd through 25th. So we'll catch y'all there.
Yeah, and finally, if your organization's struggling with burnout and stress management, Rachelle and I offer in-house coaching to help your staff get back on track. You can reach out to us at burnoutbanter@gmail.com or via LinkedIn for personal support tailored to your team's needs. And with that, we'll conclude this little add-on to the session, and we'll see you all next month.